Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Dethklok entitled Dethalbum IV. That's right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. This is not a dream, this is not a joke, and you did not hear me incorrectly. The long wait is finally over. Dethklok have returned with their first full-blown, full-length studio album in nearly 10 years, their fourth full-length studio album overall. It has been a long, grueling, arduous a decade of time for Dethklok fanatics worldwide, waiting for this moment, waiting for the return of Metalocalypse as well. For those of you somehow unaware as to why this is such a big deal, because maybe you weren't paying attention to Dethklok and Metalocalypse back in the late 2000s or early 2010s, maybe you weren't into metal at that point, or maybe you're a literal goo goo gaga baby watching this video. I don't know, it's possible, a guess. Allow me to explain a few things for you very quickly. Dethklok is the subject of an Adult Swim animated series called Metalocalypse, which tells the story of a death metal band that somehow got so popular that they literally control, like, global economy and culture. It's literally Beatlemania times 50 fucking million. The show was a big hit. I remember watching it way back in the day in like middle school and high school. Anna and I every now and then will get really fucking high and or drunk, order some fucking fast food, and we'll just binge watch a whole bunch of it on YouTube as well. Like, it's still really fucking funny, and at one point, this show was so popular that it just made sense to turn the fictional band into a real band. Led by actor, comedian, and Metalocalypse co-creator Brendan Small on vocals, guitar, and bass, and extreme metal percussionist extraordinaire Gene Hoglan on drums. Now, I don't really know the specifics as to why or how Dethklok disappeared over the course of the past decade. I know that there's some kind of legal copyright dispute between Brendan Small and Adult Swim. I guess things must be at least semi-settled for the moment, because Dethklok is back, and there's a bunch of other stuff happening within the Dethklok and Metalocalypse universe, including another album, which will be the soundtrack to an animated film coming out at the end of this next week. For the purposes of this video, however, we are talking exclusively about Dethalbum IV, and we might talk about the movie later on. Now, with this in mind, it's pretty much impossible for me to tell you how or if at all this music factors into that upcoming movie or really any other Metalocalypse content. I certainly don't recognize any of this material from prior seasons and episodes of the Metalocalypse show. But I can tell you that Dethalbum IV is in its own right, in its own regard, and on its own ground, a thoroughly well-produced and executed slice of melodic death metal that longtime fans will appreciate and enjoy. From the moment this record starts until the moment this record ends, it really doesn't feel like much time has passed, if any at all. Dethklok sound pretty much exactly like how you remember Dethklok sounding, and there really isn't any time wasted here. Tracks like Gardener of Vengeance, Mutilation on a Saturday Night, and Mermaider 3 are chock full of the tongue-in-cheek, self-aware, mellow death metal brutality that made Dethklok and Metalocalypse such a colossal hit back in the day, that have continued to make them such cult icons and classics of their fields. All of these songs have weight and momentum and urgency and heart, performed with genuine care and skill, but they're also kinda fucking silly. They're also pretty fucking goofy. Gardener of Vengeance especially had me cackling with samples of lawnmowers and weed whackers over top of just this gnarly, churning, battering mellow death riffage. I will note that those lawnmower and weed whacker samples are way too high in the mix, way too loud. They, at a certain point, just drown everything else out, and this does turn into a somewhat awkwardly noisy mess. But hey, fuck it. Everything else is so goddamn tight, and I do still chuckle and chortle when I first hear the start to like rev up like the world's shittiest, crappiest fucking chainsaw. Then there's stuff like Bloodbath, I Am the Beast, Horse of Fire, which embrace very cliche, stereotypical metal lyricism and imagery, but in a way that's kind of endearing, almost like some really cheesy, corny, fun power metal. Like, it is very self-aware and tongue-in-cheek, but it also takes itself just seriously enough. The songs themselves pack a lot of punch. They're very grand and over the top, and probably among some of the most epic material on the record. There's a lot of size and scale and atmosphere to these numbers, a lot of different dynamics and progressions, and some very triumphant guitar work as well, practically soaring over top everything else sometimes, like an eagle proudly flying through the sky. Bloodbath especially, I would say, is Dethklok at their most Dethklokian. Everything you immediately recognize about this band, sharpened and refined to the absolute maximum. I will say on my very first playthrough, I wasn't really that into Satellite Bleeding or SOS because I felt they were just a little bit too slow for my personal liking, but on my second playthrough, I came to appreciate some of the more cosmic guitar work of Satellite Bleeding and also the more militaristic percussion and like the choral vocals of SOS. It kind of feels like a call to action, especially as Brendan just repeatedly screams and roars out Rise amongst this pounding drum work. This album is just functionally and flow-wise so fucking tight. I could bounce fucking quarters off this goddamn thing. It's got 11 tracks and it clocks in at 43 minutes with really no fat or filler to speak of whatsoever. The production is great. There's a lot happening musically and it's all very well balanced. I do think Brendan has the tendency to repeat these very simplistic rhythm guitar chugs and progressions now and then across the album, but I can't hate, not one bit. He's doing an amazing fucking job. Vocally, I think this is the best he has sounded on any album. Like, this is a far cry from the very generic gutturals he was doing back on, like, the first Def album. There's a lot more character to this. There's a lot more maturity and wisdom. His voice is very dry, and it cackles, and there's just more depth to it. And do I really need to sit here and tell you that Gene fucking Hoglan, of all goddamn fucking people, is a goddamn fucking machine on this goddamn fucking thing? I don't think so. I certainly hope not. But why not? Since we're already here, spoiler alert, shocker, I know, breaking news, Gene Hoglan is a fucking machine on this thing. I'm feeling a strong 4 to 5 on this one. It wouldn't change your mind if you fucking hated Dethklok or if you just didn't give a fucking shit, but, like, also, whatever, if that were the case, you probably wouldn't be here right now, so I'm not really concerned about, you know, what you would say. This is exactly what people who love Dethklok want to hear from Dethklok. They are going to love every goddamn fucking bit of it. I'm not really sure where Dethklok goes beyond this. From what I understand, this new movie and this new chapter of Dethklok is kind of supposed to be the finale to the Metalocalypse series, so it stands to reason that this could also be the last time we hear from Dethklok. I don't know for sure, don't quote me on this. But if that is the case, and those implications and my assumptions turn out to be fact, then honestly, I don't think you could go out on a much stronger note than Dethalbum IV. Once again, strong 4 to 5. It's not going to break hearts or change lives, but you know what? It'll be fun. You'll have fun with it. You'll laugh. You'll giggle. You'll bang your head. You'll squee with joy. And isn't that what matters? I certainly think so, at least. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown e-fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.